Good to have the Honourable Male presence in the chamber. Good to see you there at work. Thank you very much. First of all, do we have any apologies? We've got two councillors, Councillor Thompson and Councillor Cowles joining online. Also, yes, an apology for Rebecca Ryan. Thank you. Moved. Jeremy, seconded. Courtney, thank you. Those in favour, those be accepted, please say aye. Against, that's carried. Do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Blackler.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 7.4, the road stopping on Murray Road. I tend to address that by just not taking part in the conversation and not voting on the matter.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else? Okay, noted. Public forum. So no members for the public forum. So we go on to the confirmation of previous meeting minutes. It's quite some time ago now, but need to be signed off as the minutes from the hearing on the interim speed management plan, which was held last year. So it's on page 6. Do we have someone who's happy to move that? Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, because I've got a few typos, but rather than waste time with the meeting now, it suddenly occurred to me, is this stuff still in the review room?
I don't believe that is, but if you just pass them on to the.
Well, so in that case, I will move that these minutes be adopted with amendment with corrections as agreed.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Holding, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, those in favour, please say aye.
No.
And against, that is carried. And then there's the minutes from the hearing on the draft annual plan from last year as well. So, Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, Mayor, sorry to do this, but there are some corrections here that go to meaning, which I don't think can be corrected, except in this meeting. For instance, if we go to page 24 of our agenda, under the number 164 East Otago Catchment Group, the fourth paragraph, thanked Council for its ongoing support, the hope to see some security with Council and moving forward. I mean, what does that mean? Does it mean they hope to see?
Yeah, well, that's essentially it. So,
okay, right.
Yeah, we'll make that amendment. Did you have further ones?
Then on page 26, at the second to last paragraph, he recalled that back in 2009, when the loan was created, the terms were agreed and 60,000 credit was provided to help pay for the interest for whatever time that lasted for as able to be used. And again, the end of that sentence just doesn't make any sense at all.
So I think we've got the full stop after lasted and remove the rest of that.
Okay. On page 30, it's the second to last paragraph again. I'm assuming, but I can't be certain, but that paragraph begins, advised by one member that the particular interest and concern was about how operational expenses would be covered and whether there was a cost recovery plan for that. Mr. Kevin question mark advised, and I presume it's Kevin Malcolm, but I'm not absolutely sure. And yes. Finally, on page 32, under asterisk 196 Oamaru Steam and Mail, bullet point number 3, ask Council to create a decent car park along Itchen Street on the land under the bridge, because it gets untidy with all the overgrown trees, 2 bus parks plus beside the railway lines. I don't think we can have a decent car park under the bridge. So again, if that can be amended to be clearer, those are 4 correction, and there are some typos, but those are the matters of meaning that I raised today.
Thank you. So you're moving in with those amendments,
Yes, I'll move that those minutes be adopted with amendments as agreed, yes.
and we have a seconder for that. Councillor Linwood, thank you. Any further discussion?
Well, sorry, I just, if I may, just on page 39, I'm just wondering if it's possible to ask on that day, at the end of the minutes, there are notices about deliberations and the following matters being discussed. And I'm just wondering if will there be an opportunity for some of these things that were mentioned then to be considered either as part of this new enhanced LTP or the LTP? I'm noticing in particular reference to provision for a small park for small dogs, district road ceiling, and the funding for the Puketapu track. These are just things that I'd like to see somehow incorporated in a meeting or decision process at some stage in the future, and unless, because otherwise they could get lost altogether.
Yeah, I just asked Harmley to comment on that, and just yeah, I think the question is, were these brought forward from this discussion into the LTP discussions that we've had up to now?
Yeah, I think all those things have been brought forward, and I think obviously you've got an item on the LTP stroke annual plan today where there's a recommendation in terms of which projects to take forward and what's not to take forward at this stage. And I think all of those are mentioned in there.
Thank you.
Okay, right. So I need to get back to where I was. Have I put that one?
No.
No. So with those amendments, I'll put those in favour, say aye, and those against, that's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you for your diligence, Councillor Hopkins. We don't have the following two sets of minutes referred to from December, so they will be hopefully at the next meeting. So now move to 5.1 and the Chief Executive's report. Hand over to Mr. Palmley for that.
Thank you very much. I'll start off by saying I'll take the report as read. The report continues with the new system we have using the organisational key results as a basis for setting my KPIs. I think we'd still say it's a work in progress in terms of embedding that in the organisation. We're all learning about that and how it works still. But hopefully it starts to give a picture of how we're progressing with the key things that the council wants to see us deliver across the organisation and across the district. A couple of things I will highlight in there on page 44 around KPI 1 around customer experience report by the Association of Local Government Information and Management. And the score we got there of 94.1% in the benchmark survey, which places 4th out of the 80 councils that participate in that, and 3rd for district councils, which I think is a really excellent result for the team, which I'd like to commend them for that. But a really great starting point and basis for which we want to build in transformation, with one of our key themes about improving the customer experience and our levels of customer service and getting some consistency in that. I'd also highlight in KPI 2 the real breadth of work we're doing to support our communities and community wellbeing and learning. And I think as well, this links well with our ambitions around transformation, and is a great platform in terms of that community wellbeing space and developing our role within that. In terms of KPI 3, prosperous districts, there's a lot going on within that area, and it's a relatively small team that's taking that forward, delivering the economic development strategy that was agreed by council. And really doing this by taking a partnership and enabling approach. So working with communities and businesses and landowners across the district to make real progress in delivering those economic ambitions. And it's great to see, despite some of the challenges we have and some of the tricky issues we have to navigate with our community, that we're getting good levels of engagement in the various aspects of that work, so that we can take that forward in partnership with our community. And then in terms of environment, I'd like to just highlight there the work we're doing with other councils, really. And I think this is a key feature of being able to take this forward with limited resources in many respects, share the learning, share the burden between the councils in dealing with our challenges and our ambitions within that environment area, and particularly within climate change. Finally, I'd just like to say a big thank you to the whole team. These are my KPIs, but I think it takes the whole team across the organisation, staff and governance, to deliver these. I think it's a really great effort to see the progress in this area, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillors, do you have questions? Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, Mayor Kircher, thank you. I have three, and congratulations indeed on the information contained on page 44. I mean, that's a real pat on the back for the team who scored that mark or achieved that success. Now, on page 43, you talk about the 2023-24 annual resident survey. You're saying the results will be known around July. We have decided to change the methodology, and I'm just wondering whether that's at this stage producing better, fuller results, more informative responses. Has the methodology changed? Is it working, and is it generating benefits?
I'm not sure I can answer that at this stage. I probably have to go back and have a look at that and discuss with the team where we're at with that. I know we're changing, how we do that, but I'm not sure we're necessarily changing all of the methodology in that and the questions. We wanted to be able to continue to compare, the results in the past with, today's resident survey. So I'll probably need to come back to you with an answer on that, Councillor Hopkins.
Okay. If I may ask question,
Certainly.
Well, look, on page 45, you've got this the gallery and strong communities, the utilisation and participation of particularly at the gallery and museum by 5% year on year. On the next page, you say, in addition, there is ongoing work to establish the baseline figure from which the 5% increase will be measured. I don't understand that, and it seems to me as though that's a bit of a fudge. I mean, I would have thought the numbers of people through the door in any given month or any given year are a perfectly good baseline, and I can't quite see what ongoing work is needed to establish it. But are you able to give us a bit more information on that?
So I refer you back to the comments I made at the start. We're trying to embed this in the organisation. So we started using the OKR, the organisational key results from with my KPIs. We've got a program of trying to roll that out throughout the organisation, so that we've got measures throughout every service as to that support those organisational KPIs, and so we've got more granular detail on that. And so we're basically reviewing all of the service performance measures to make sure that they align with those OKRs. So that it is a work in progress across all the organisation, and I think we will get more and better information in terms of how we're performing, and be able to drill down into some of those OKRs and see in more detail. That work is still ongoing with managers at the moment. I don't know whether Ms. Flavor would like to comment any further on that.
If I may, yes, this particular OKR is written around cultural facilities and sporting facilities as well. And you're quite right, Councillor Hopkins, it's far easier to measure who comes through the doors at the Gallery, Opera House, Archive, Museum, but the use of the sporting areas is a bit more problematic to measure. So baselines, as Alex said, right across the delivery of services is still being developed.
One more.
My third question on the next page, in the third paragraph, you're talking about engagement with community groups and the placemaking better off funding. Your second to last sentence says, however, and this is talking about playground upgrades were parking trial, community amenities and playground upgrades were prioritised in Omarama. However, these are now being revisited with the community following some concerns about whether these should be the highest priorities for the whole community. Well, what does the word should mean? I would have thought could mean, or it might indicate some dispute within the community, but who's assessing the hierarchy of value that and merit that implicit in the word should? I don't quite understand that.
I don't want to dwell on one particular word and read too much into that. I would say in all of the placemaking, we sought to work with and engage with communities, and where there are, organised community groups there, that has been a starting point. I think in terms of Marama, we were engaging with that group. We thought we'd got a prioritised list of projects that reflected some of the things in the master plan, but some of the community wishes as well. But it became apparent that not all of the community agreed with that, and so it's just a case of then re-looking at that and working through that to make sure that, whilst we're not going to be able to please everyone in every community, that we've got what we feel confident is a solid reflection of community sentiment. That makes sense. I don't know whether the mayor's been involved in that, whether you want to comment on that further.
No, I'll just add to it and using the word should, so that you can be satisfied that it's used appropriately. So, I believe our staff has had conversations with parts of the community, and out of that, the priority, it was determined the priority should be the three things that are mentioned there. Following a bit of angst in the community, I went up and had a meeting. What was going to be with maybe just the working group ended up being a public meeting. Our economic development manager, Mel Jones, joined via Zoom to that meeting, and we went through quite a thorough grilling, I guess, around what the priorities should be. And what the meeting determined was that the priorities should actually be the sports field, and looking at the rabbit board land and what it might be used for. So that's how I would use the word should in that context. Since then, there's been a bit of further confusion thrown in as to whether that represents enough of the community view or not. There were about 20 people at the meeting, which seemed to be very one-sided in its determination, but equally we've heard from some that maybe that wasn't their priority. So I'm leaving it to staff to get on and sort through that. But I think the main thing is that they need to have just enough consensus around the community about what the project should be, and get on with it, because otherwise you end up spending a whole lot of time and the resources talking about it and not actually doing it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the report? Deputy Mayor Halelele.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you to Mr. Palmley for a great report, and really awesome to kind of read a lot of the outcomes that we're seeing through. I'm just a question on page 46 in regards to the Mayor Task Force for Jobs. I see that with the team that's delivering that have created or delivered on 38 placements so far this financial year. Do we know what the total number is, or the target? I'm just mindful that it's really good to try and concentrate on the quality of the placements, so they're not overexerting themselves, given that there will be a decrease in the funding.
I don't have the figure to hand, but I do believe that is over the agreed number of placements that we were targeting. And the Mayor and I and the team had a catch up with the LGNZ team who are working on this, and we've essentially put in a request that if there is any underspend elsewhere within the country, that we could usefully use that there, given that we are overperforming that area at the moment, and we don't want to lose momentum. There are more young people out there that would benefit from the support, the schemes being successful. So I think I'm not going to apologise for overperformance. I guess there's a concern as to whether we can now sustain that going forward.
The team's done really well. I think used up the first 6 months funding in 4.5 months and achieved more than what the outcomes were required for that. We were able to bring forward the second half or second 6 months of funding, and yeah, that's certainly been used very well and getting very good results. Good number of apprenticeships amongst those placements. And there's a real focus on making sure that the young people being put into the placements are as suitable as possible for what the roles are. So there's quite a process around that, and there's also quite a process around the pastoral care that makes sure that, you know, here's a young person, Mr. Employer or Mrs. Employer, and they all yours, and leave them to it. It's rather a softer handover than that, and actually this is a job we'll share, making sure that the person turns up at work if there's issues and so on. That's it's not the employer that has to, you know, do all the background work. That's one of our team doing that. So it's been very successful. We're certainly looking for whatever extra funding we can get, as Mr. Palmley said, and I know our team will use that to very good effect. Any other questions, comments? Okay, someone like to move, receive the report? Deputy Mayor Halili, and second, Councillor Linwood. Beat Councillor Hopkins, well done.
No,
Oh, okay. Right, so with that, those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, that is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Palmley. Okay, moving on to 6.1, recommendations from the Harbour Area Subcommittee. And hand over to, who wants to speak to this? Mr. Van der Speck? Can't see you through there, but
Yeah, it's not, that line is not connected. Sure.
okay. Thank you very much. If you'd just like to speak to this one, first with an update on.
Certainly. Essentially, this paper went to the Harbour Area Committee to approve the site plan for the improvements and development of the marketplace zone in the harbour. Essentially, it's improved car parking, some improved landscaping, setting aside some areas for potential future development, and improvements to the marketplace area. What we intend to do, following your approval, is to go to market for the construction of the car park area, and we'll run two separate processes, essentially one for the car parking and the broader developments, and then we'll run a separate process for the farmers market area, which will be more of a design build process.
I just make a wee comment that on the additional officer comment that speaks about the resolution of the Harbour Area Subcommittee and so on. It paints a particular picture which wasn't quite accurate, but I've got some alternative wording around that. It's not overly an issue, other than that for the record, it was that the officer recommendations were added to during the discussion, and an additional clause was moved. So yeah, it's just it makes it look otherwise like it was a resolution, everything was decided, and then something else was added in, whereas it was actually part of the discussion. But with that's not as important as the recommendations itself from the Harbour Area Committee. So they are in front of you, councillors. Someone would wish to move? Councillor Holding, and second, Councillor Linwood. Thank you. Any discussion on that, Councillor Hopkins?
Yeah, look, I'm happy to support this, but I would like one very minor amendment with the consent of the mover and seconder. And it is to actually Amendment 2. I'm just slightly anxious about the word detailed in there. And you might think this is pedantry, but I don't think it is. The mayor has frequently advised us or counselled us not to get down among the weeds, i.e. too focused on operational details. And I think there's a risk potentially if we have detailed development in there that might actually happen. My view would be that the subcommittee should see plans, should receive progress, should have input on design, colours and so on. But beyond that, I think if that read confirms the ongoing engagement of the Harbour Area Subcommittee members in the development of the Farmers Market Urban Park area, it would just avoid the possible risk of individual members or the committee micromanaging things. So I would personally prefer to see, with the consent of the mover and seconder, the motion amended to have that word removed.
I'll just speak to that. Essentially, you ran through the things that you think were all right. I mean, those are the details. Yeah, at the moment, all it's showing is this is the area, and there's no there wasn't any allowance for engagement of the members of the Harbour Area Committee beyond that. So it is about improving the plan when it comes through. It's not about them designing it. I know in the past we've had situations where, you know, councillor may have felt that they needed to change the shape of a window in a building, for example, which was probably going well beyond the pale. But this is just about making sure the concept is right, that everything is allowed for, and you know that the farmers market's catered for, as well as the day-to-day use that area might receive by the general public. So certainly my definition of detailed is exactly what you said, is the types of things that should be considered by the members of the Harbour Area Subcommittee. So I don't know what beyond that they would be doing, but certainly it's not foreseen that they'd be doing anything more beyond that. Mr. Van Speek.
If I may, it would probably be helpful from officers' point of view if you clarified your expectations around any decision making by the Harbour Area Committee on the design.
It's worded the way it is because it's referring to the members of the subcommittee, not the subcommittee. So we're not wanting to hold things up. It's about doing the engagement, but rather than just with the ED team and stakeholders, which isn't defined any further than that, it's saying that the members of the subcommittee get to see the updates and make comment on them along the way. I don't think anyone wants to hold it up by saying, well, we've got to wait for another month before it can go before a committee meeting. Councillor Hopkins, are you satisfied with that level of detail that you've described?
My view is, I've made a suggestion to the mover and seconder. The counter argument has also been presented effectively by yourself. I still think, even the way you've described it, that members outside a committee framework and outside a meeting framework where their comments can either be scrutinised by members of the media and or the public, I do think that does raise the possibility of micromanagement. But I accept also the notion that if detailed development essentially envisages what I itemised as what I thought would have been higher concept aspects of the design, then so be it. But I rather suspect that I personally would be more comfortable if indeed that engagement was through a meeting process rather than individual members getting in staff's ears on a one-off basis without necessarily even agreeing with each other.
Councillor Linwood.
I'm happy for the word detailed to stay in there. I think we're just reading a little bit too much into it if we read it like that.
So I think we've you've given us a really good description of what you think, what your expectations would be. I've confirmed that's my expectation as well. It's on record, so I think it gives staff every ability that if they feel like there's any micromanagement happening, they can tell the particular councillor or mayor or member of the public to go away as politely as possible, of course. But it's not about that. It's about making sure all of the things you've described are done. It's not about how to manage the process and so on. The subcommittee has said, or basically to, recommended to council that they say that we're delegating chief executive the authority to negotiate and approve the contract. So that's the final sign off, and anything else is feedback along the way. And I think the project manager is very, very diplomatic and well tuned to just getting on with the job and making sure. Well, I'm not sure, but I think I know who I'm talking about. Anyway, so that's where it's at. Again, a bit like should we're getting stuck on a level of detail that's I think we've defined well enough. But happy to hear others' thoughts. Councillor McCone and then Councillor Holding.
Sorry, I wasn't going to say anything, but I will. So just reading through the figures here, we've been approved 335,000 from MBI. The rest of it has been funded or allowed for in the annual plans. So that will be borrowed money for the balance. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not too sure whether it's that or it's using harbour endowment funds. So I'm not clear on that one.
I'd have to come back and confirm that, sorry.
Yeah. So there are, I'm sure, I believe, reserves in the harbour endowment fund, which would be an appropriate use of funding if that was determined to be the case. But if there's any doubt about that, maybe that's a need for a report to come through and just make that final approval if necessary. Councillor Holding.
A little bit off topic. I was just going to note that on the map there, the Caesar site plan has been broken into areas, but it's not quite clear which area 1, 2, 3, and 4 are. And it's just, there's a commentary saying that it would be lighting would be area 4 would be lowest priority to. Yeah, so I don't know if it's for the reader.
Yeah, my apologies. Area 4 is the area to the east of the Scots building. That would be the lowest priority.
Okay. As the mover, are you happy that the word details stays in there?
Yeah, I'm quite comfortable with that. And just note that it has been a project that's been signalled in the 2020 Murray Harbour and Beyond plan. I think it's going to be a great addition to the jewel of the crown down there to tidy up a sort of a gravelly area that is, I wouldn't say an eyesore, but it's getting busier and more popular across the board for locals and visitors. So this is supporting the motion today.
Okay, thank you. Any further speakers? I'll put it then. Those in favour, please say aye. Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 7, the long-term plan preliminary decisions. And hand over to Mr. Palmley.
Thank you. I'll make a start on this. And I think, first of all, an apology. This is a rapidly changing picture in terms of where the government is at on things. And so we haven't had an opportunity to brief on this prior to this recommendation coming forward. We learnt on the 13th of February that there was going to be an additional option under the government's plans for waters to be able to defer the long-term plan for a year and to instead do an enhanced annual plan. And we had little time to consider that before we had to finalise the paper to come here before council. Our analysis of the current situation is that there's obviously a lot of change happening at the moment, not just within the water space, but for us as an organisation. And because of this, we think it's likely that if we did proceed with a long-term plan this year, we'd have to do an amended long-term plan next year. And so there is a lot of effort and cost involved in doing essentially long-term plan for 2 years in a row. We think, therefore, on balance, there's advantages in deferring the long-term plan for a year and doing an enhanced annual plan. I think in doing that, if you accept that recommendation, we shouldn't be using that as a reason just to shorten our focus. We still need to be, as an organisation, thinking long term despite the uncertainties, and all the work that we've done to date in terms of long-term plan, thinking about where we're going, what it means, and the difficult choices we have, similar to other councils, still remain. I think also what it does do is potentially gives us a longer window in which to have engagement and conversations with our community about some of the difficult choices we'll have to make going forward to be able to deliver the ambitions for the district and for the council, whilst making sure things remain affordable for our communities, at a time that's challenging for them as well. So that's it in terms of my introduction. I'm going to hand over to Mr. Nichols, who's going to take us through the report and any highlights there and the recommendations.
Good morning. So just following on from that, obviously there's a lot of change. I've attached what the government update and the outline plan for local waters done well, attachment 1. So it shows that there's still a lot of change and a lot of uncertainty that we're working with. So we feel to progress with a long-term plan now would not really make a complete picture and fit for purpose document for consulting with our public. We feel that it would be good to have that extra 12 months. It doesn't change anything we've done to date, doesn't lose any work we've done to date, but we can carry on working on those options, fine tuning, especially in the waters projects, working out scope and timing a bit better so that we can have a better completed document to consult on next year. Also, there'll be more time to get certainty on Waka Kotahi funding, which will impact on what level of roading projects we put in. We feel that it would align better with our transformation. So obviously there's a lot of change going on at the moment, and it would be settled down. We'd have our new groups of activities, and our long-term plan could be a bit more transformational as we initially intended before waters were added back in. We also feel that it would save audit costs, because we feel that completing a full-blown LTP this year, and then with all the change going on, we would require an amendment. We would most likely require an amendment next year. So that would require another audit. We don't feel that there's any negatives to deferring the long-term plan. We think that the timeframes will be kept to a lot better. Like, we'll still do the enhanced annual plan this year. The rates will still be set as planned. The annual report will still take place over September, October, and we will still keep progressing the long-term plan behind the scenes to meet the normal deadlines next year. So I have outlined in the table all the pros and cons. Also, I'm not sure how much, whether you want to spend more time on this or the other attachments, are the projects that are going to be progressed in the long-term plan, whether we do a long-term plan this year or next year, and the projects that we've just put a hold on for now to come back to. So obviously, if we do an enhanced annual plan now, we'll put all of our focus into perfecting those 2025 numbers, and then we can still revisit the project list down the line as well. So it's not be all and end all, these 10-year plans, budgets at the moment. We can come back to that later in the year as we start to pick up the long-term plan again.
Councillor Blacklow.
Thank you. I just had a question just to clarify the work that's been undertaken around potential changes to revenue financing policy and those that in that kind of space. When we say the rates would be set for this 1 year, and then we'd revisit the LTP in a year's time, or 4 in a year's time, would that stuff all be deferred until then as well? Is that the rates would be set based on the existing settings at present? Is that correct?
Yeah, the rates will come out of this annual plan process, but as far as the revenue and financing policy goes, I know that there's already been some work done to that, and there will be a paper coming to the 12th of March council meeting to in line with those discussions that we've already had. So they're looking at implementing some of those revenue and financing changes this year, but then they'll review that again as part of the LTP. The only, what they're saying, if we defer the LTP for 12 months, the only paper that needs to be extended is the DC policy right now. Everything else can just roll over into that RDP for that extra 12 months.
Councillor McCain.
On that basis, I'm quite happy to go with recommendations 1 and 3, but I'd like to fine tune 2.
Councillor Hopkins.
I had a couple of questions. First, if I could ask those, is that okay?
I think so.
Right. Just on page 60, and Amanda, you mentioned this, the reference to roading and having clarity about that. But at the bottom of page 60, it says that Waka Kotahi, or NZTA Waka Kotahi, as it's now known, has made a decision last September to delay adopting the National Land Transport Program by 2 months to the end of August 2024. So I'm puzzled if we have to bring out an LTP, presumably either in July, adopt it by the end of June or September next year. I can't quite see how the extra amount of time is going to help us if we have to hang around that long to get any figures from Waka Kotahi. The other question I had, and maybe this is for or two others, but the enhanced annual plan adoption, Mandy, we're proposing that we adopt that on June the 25th this year. Has the minister offered us a September option for the enhanced annual plan? And finally, just on page 67, the letter from the guy from DIA references under headline 2 transitional provisions that enable councils to defer the review of water services bylaws. What bylaws are we going to have to defer? Is that an issue for us? I'm not aware of anything on the table at the moment, but why is that in there?
Well, starting with the Waka Kotahi, so obviously if we stick with the current timeframes, we would be adopting our long-term plan on the 25th of June, and we wouldn't know the Waka Kotahi funding until August this year. So we say if we defer 12 months, then we would have got the certainty about funding and would be all good for next year. Enhanced annual plan. So we could carry on. There was the options that were given in December. We could defer our long-term plan until September this year. We haven't considered that at all because that is when we complete our annual report. It puts all of our cycle out of whack. We would still have to do a lot of work for June to be able to set our rates and everything in June anyway. So we haven't really considered the September option at all.
And supplementary to that, the minister hasn't offered a September date for the enhanced annual plan option.
That's correct. The only date for the annual plan is to have that adopted by the 30th of June. Correct.
And then in terms of the point in the DIA letter, we might have to get back to you on that one. I don't know specifics about the water. Do you know, Nadi? Not significant.
So yeah, just the response was that manager for waters doesn't believe it's significant or that we've got anything that's due to expire. Okay, any other questions? Mandy?
I just want to make one note in the report, as Mr. Palmer mentioned, this has been developed very quickly and things have changed as we first developed this paper. And I just wanted to on page 61, it references that we will be not preparing a CD and that we'll be adopting the draft enhanced annual plan at the council meeting on the 26th of March. I just want to confirm that we are working on the draft enhanced annual plan. It may or may be ready for the 26th of March. The requirement is to consult on the annual plan and we will be preparing a consultation document, engagement document for that. So will be, the annual plan is an unaudited as well. So so I just wanted to confirm that detail to you all because I didn't want you to expect to see something else.
Has there been any decision on what involvement I'll have along the way. What involvement I'll have along the way in leading. So I'm supposed to be leading the plan, so I just want to understand. At the moment, you know, there's been a lot happened and so forth, and I certainly haven't been leading it. So I just want to have an understanding of what that looks like, because there's a lot of stuff that has to be done quite quickly.
Absolutely, and the involvement was planned for the long-term plan won't change for the involvement through the annual plan. We've just had to very quickly change a direction when this came out on the 14th of February, was released to us all. So we've just tried to prepare this and change tack. So yeah, there'll be a conversation that we can have to confirm exactly what participation you do want to have, but it shouldn't be any different to that of the long-term plan. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Holding, and then Deputy Mayor Haley.
Just in Chair Mandy, in regards to the consultation document, we've noted that we're sort of been operating in a period of complexity and uncertainty. And we somehow incorporated that document a bit more of a glimpse into the future for the annual plan, just to give a bigger, broader picture.
Yeah, as Mr. Palmy said before, a lot of the work towards the long-term plan's already been done, and it's good work that's been done. It's great work that's been done, and it has given us a bit more of a 10-year picture ahead. So we don't want to lose any of that work, and we will be incorporating more into the consultation document than we generally would, as far as a bit of a longer term view, rather than just looking at the 1 year frame that we normally would. And that was at the request of the Mayor as well, when we initially sort of spoke to him about this change. We've got that information there, and we do want to build on that, and we sort of want to lead directly into the long-term plan at the end of the annual plan program, if this is the decision that the councillors agree to take, because that work is ready and we can actually lead straight into that program of getting our community involved early as well. So,
Deputy Mayor Haley.
Thank you through the chair. It was just a comment really, just to acknowledge the staff's work, you know, like on this long-term plan, and just some of the options that have been given. And we know that there is a lot of uncertainty at the moment, especially with the government reforms that are happening, and even the government that are still trying to make their decision, and yet we are expected to try and help fulfill our role. So it was just really a comment just to thank you in terms of just the information that you've given us. There's a whole heap of information that's there, but I think it gives us, or gives me, like enough assurance and guidance, at least just to kind of make a start. And this will be a step phase in terms of what we need to do with, with these options that you've given. So it was really just I think I'm quite comfortable with where things are at, whether we amend option 2 slightly just to look at those projects, but overall, thank you.
Look, I'm sorry, I'm just thinking about this, and I'm thinking, I appreciate your ruling on this matter. I know Councillor McCone has moved 1 and 3, and
No, nothing's been moved yet.
Well, he did say
He's commented on whether he supports them or not, but
I was under the
there
impression he said he was going to move.
I
them, but,
didn't take that as a motion, because I
Okay.
would have sought a seconder if I had.
well, so that may render the point of order null and void, but I would just ask that perhaps before we put the recommendations, if there are going to be amendments to recommendation 2, i.e. the list of initiatives to be included, that we have the discussion about how we would like to vary that list before we vote on 1 and 3. I think it would be a bad process to vote on 1 and 3 and then vote on 2. So that's my point of order. If you'd rule on it, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I think it is null and void, as you assessed yourself. So, well done on that. Thank you. Councillor McCone, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, look, I would like to move 1 and 3, and I take on board what Jim's already said. I would not move 2 in its current form. 2 to me needs further looking at and consideration, and I don't think we've got the time to do it now. I think we've got the time to do it in the next probably 2 or 3 weeks, but I feel as if it could be further improved upon.
Councillor Blackson.
Yeah, I just had a series of of questions pertaining to the list of projects in and out.
So, sorry to interrupt. So I'll basically take your comments as a notice of motion, councillor McCone. I think there's still questions and so on we need to go through to get to that point. Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, so I just, given the level of uncertainty that we've established in the report, I'm just wondering why, well, with specific reference to water schemes that are primarily for stock use, and I mean there may be other projects as well, but this is the lens I'm putting over around this question. And also coupled with that, the indications we're getting from central government around still the requirement to meet the standards, but language around local communities actually delivering outcomes that suit a local solution for a local outcome, basically. I'm just wondering why we haven't pushed all those high cost per user projects outside of this enhanced annual plan and into year one of the deferred LTP. And I do have a series of other questions, but I think that's
okay. I'll just ask Mr. Palmer to respond to that one.
I'll pick up on the reason why those water schemes are included in there, and whilst acknowledging some of them are mainly used for stock, the fact that they go to households places requirements on us under law and the standards we need to meet in that, and no one is talking about changing the law and the standards in terms of what's expected for water schemes, and that's been further supported by now a letter from Te Mata Aroa as the regulator, with an expectation that we complete all of those schemes within a reasonable time frame. I'm trying to remember the exact time frame. I've got in mind the end of 2024, the end of this year, for getting those up to standard. That's going to be a real push. If we deferred that, we consciously deferred that by a year, I think we'd be in a very serious discussion with the water regulator as to why we're not following that direction that they've given us, and I wouldn't like to speculate what the consequences of that will be for us making a decision not to comply with the law.
Just to clarify, I'm not. My suggestion has nothing to do with ignoring the standards. My question relates to the manner in which we're currently required to go about these projects, which in many cases we're required to deliver things that it just concerns me that we're making costly decisions when there may be an opportunity not too far into the distant future to still meet the solution, but in a more cost-effective manner.
So I can't see exactly what's going to happen into the future, but I think you need to look at how long it took the last government to reach a solution on water when it had it used its powers to mandate. We're now looking at an enabling framework from government for local councils to decide how they want to manage water. It's going to be years before we reach conclusions on that and have arrangements set up. And in the meantime, we've got the water regulator saying we need to meet these standards by the end of this calendar year. So thinking that we can set up a new arrangement in time to deliver these schemes in a different way, I just think is unrealistic. There's got to be, there's going to be a lot of work need to be done, and a lot of discussions, at a management level and a political level, as to what is workable, what are solutions to deliver the affordable water envisaged by the current government, and the onus is on councils to do that, to come together and do that. So we're almost starting from scratch in terms of what are the solutions for water. There's been a lot of work done in terms of analysis, but in terms of what are practical solutions that are also politically deliverable is going to take a number of years to resolve.
So supplementary to that, I guess I'd also like to understand if we've considered the risk of we're still undecided as to how costs of those kind of schemes will be distributed amongst the community. So it's hard to tell how that will sit at this stage. But if the situation was such that it was the worst case scenario for those smaller schemes and it was a higher cost setup, have we considered the risk of people basically leaving the scheme and obtaining their own water by sinking a bore or such like, and then being left with an asset that we've upgraded that's unaffordable for users?
I believe that risk has been discussed and considered, but it's a hard one to predict, what the, anyone who tries to predict human behaviour often comes unstuck. We can't predict what, how people will respond to this, and that'll be on an individual basis. So, will it be more cost effective for some individuals to implement their whole, their own water schemes? I don't know, and what decisions they'll make, but it's obviously a risk that's in there. But it's not a risk that we can then plan for in terms of saying, well, we're not going to do this scheme. We can just plan for what we have to comply with in terms of the law and the directives we receive from the regulator.
Anything further? Councillor Hopkins?
Well, if we are going to talk about projects, and I'm rather inclined to the view that we should put on the table today any questions or proposals we have. I think the idea of hanging around or waiting and revisiting in 3 weeks' time may delay things and not necessarily enhance the quality of the decision. I have the questions on the first page of the projects to be included. I've identified 9. These are the big ticket items. The Awamoka drinking water standards upgrade, Bushy Creek. There's 2 emergency generator provisions at 240,000 each. I'm wondering if that's a duplication. The Kauri Hill upgrade, Oamaru rural water mains renewal, the Oamaru wastewater treatment plant interim improvements, then the Oamaru water strategy phase 1 build and phase 2 and 3 planning. And finally, the Oamaru wastewater relocation and renewal at Orwell Street. And in every instance, I'm not necessarily suggesting that we scrap them. I'm wondering, however, in most of those cases, there's a big upfront figure in the first year and a much smaller amount in the second year. Not with the exception of Bushy Creek. Either Awamoka and Kauri Hill are all the 800,000 in each case is first year only. The Oamaru rural water mains 1.6 million first year, 260,000 second. My question to Mr. Pacey and Amanda would be, can these be staged so that the costs can be allocated proportionally, say a third, or half? Yes, it would increase impacts in year 2, but it would certainly reduce impacts in year 1. If they have to be done and we have to actually meet Te Mata Arawai's deadlines and face prosecution and possible fines and imprisonment for officers if we don't, and let's put that on the record because it's a fact. We can't necessarily just keep on delaying them, but I would have thought that if we have initiated the process, even if it's not completed in 1 year, that would be sufficient, I would have thought, to forestall prosecution. So in those 9 cases, which are the big ticket items, the biggest ticket items on that first page, is staging the expenditure a feasible option?
Before Mr. Pacey comes in and answers that in detail, I think you need to recognise that this is staged. We've done a lot of scaling and we've deferred some of the costs from the first few years there. There is a big jump in costs after the third year, so into the 4th year. So a lot of that work has been done. If you're going to do that further, then the mountain that we have to climb in the 4th year in terms of costs gets even bigger. So I just caution that a lot of that work has been done already, and I have a concern that in the water space we're already kicking the can down the road of costs we know that will need to be incurred. And that could have an impact on our community, whoever is delivering water by that stage for our community in terms of the cost. But I don't know whether, Marty, you want to come in terms of some of the detailed questions there?
Or you can just whichever one.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, just to elaborate on Mr. Palmley's comments. So we've scaled back year 1, 2, and 3 of the work program. It was sitting at about 30 million a year for year 1, 2, and 3. So we've scaled it back to 17.5 first year, 22 the next year, and then 17 the following year. And then yes, because we've scaled it back, it's pushed it out to year 4 and 5 and 6, and it's sort of around 60 to 70 million a year after that. So we're trying to do our best and push things out as far as we can, and do certainly the bare minimum. We're certainly required to comply with Te Mata Arawa's requirements to install protozoa barriers, and we'll do that. We may do that we will do that in a staged approach. It won't be like a full treatment plant upgrade like we've done in Amarama. It'll be a partial treatment plant upgrade at a lot of these sites. And that's also to do with timing as an ability to deliver.
Thank you, and I thank you both for those explanations, and I accept the logic of what you put forward. But that said, I'm just looking at a couple. Oamaru rural water main renewals, 1.6 million first year, 260,000 second, and then Oamaru water treatment plant renewals, which I think is 1 million in the first year and 200,000 in the second. Is that the relocation of, that might be a relocation of Orr Street? It's a bit difficult to read some of these, the lines are so small. But in each of those cases, there's a very big, huge amount in the first year, a small, much smaller amount in the second. No possibility of tweaking those at all, is there?
So the water main renewals is the carry on of a project which is currently being let, which is a contract to renew failing rural water pipes, like pipes Hamden, Meraki, around, because Oamaru is a much larger area. We haven't spent a lot of money in the rural area. So this is replacing pipes, which probably should have been replaced earlier, but we've been doing water treatment upgrades. So that's to continue that project. So that's actually 100% committed. There's no decision to be made on that one, as in we've signed a contract for it, and they're building it. The other one was water treatment. So that's replacement of membranes. The $1 million is a membrane replacement, and the $200,000 is for valves and pumps and bits and pieces.
Councillor Percival.
Yeah, Marty, I wonder sometimes whether the description of some of this work is understandable by us, particularly looking at condition assessment, wastewater, excluding mains. And you have the condition assessment of manholes, which is $1 million, excess of $1 million over the next 10 years. I mean, condition assessment, to me, is someone wandering around and having a look and seeing if it's still serviceable. But anyway, neither here nor there. I do believe that there is, to put something like this in front of us, we need to know the priority and the urgency of it and the need for it to happen in the next 4 or 3 to 5 years. That to me is the question with all this. We've got great big lists of things, but we don't know how important they are to keep the community safe and healthy. And I think that's where you actually let us down a bit, in fact, for us to make an assessment accurately on it. But I appreciate the work you've done, but I would like to see the 10% taken off the lot. Okay.
Thank you. Cut. So effectively what we've done is we've stripped it by almost a half by pushing it out into year 4 to 10. These are the things that I'd recommend as a water professional, you're doing more than this. This is less than the bare minimum as a water professional. We think we can get away with it, but there's risks involved in this. Some of these things that we're doing will cause impacts on levels of service or there might be times when people, where there's water goes out, or where the treatment plant doesn't work, or where we don't have sufficient storage. So this is stripped right back. It's bare bones. This is minus 10%. I feel like I'm giving you bad advice, suggesting we do this. We should be doing more.
Councillor Blackburn?
So I would add to that, actually, that the recommendations you got here are ELT's recommendations that, the water team, when they came and met with us, were recommending we did more, and ELT pared it back further. So I think, to support Marty, this is not his best advice. This is ELT's advice. He would advise you doing more, and he advised us doing more.
Thank you. If you're comfortable for me to move on from water, Kucha, was it?
Well, Marty's in the hot seat. I do have some questions, because I think there's two aspects to this. One is the what projects we include. The other is the costing of the projects. And what we've seen in the past is we've seen very conservative numbers being used, which we would expect from engineers, and making sure that they're covering everything. But we've also seen levels of service that I think aren't really necessary on some of our infrastructure projects. Money being spent to make things look pretty rather than just get the job done. And the problem we have is councils everywhere are spending an inordinate amount on water infrastructure, and it is to the extent where actually we're running the risk that we do water and we can't do anything else because all of the funding is allocated to that and so on. That's not your fault. That's just the way things are. But what my question is, can we, I'd rather we do more things, but can we actually cut the cost? Can we minimize the risk and any need for contingencies? Can we take off any gold plating unless it's absolutely in the public eye and it would be done for that reason? Can we keep driveways as to water plants asphalt gravel rather than having asphalt, all those sorts of things? What can we do to actually cut the costs on some of these, to actually put something in there so we don't have a repeat of like Western water mains replacements, for which a $6 or $8 million project, I can't remember what it was, ended up being $1 million less. What can we do to bank some of those savings early rather than later?
So before Marty answers that directly, I just want to point out, and we probably should have explained this at the start, we've sort of indicated in the column there changes. And so where you see the word scaled in there, that's where we've, asked the team to do some work on what can we cut back, what is the bare minimum we need to do within this area, getting rid of the niceties. I'm not sure we have any gold-plated water schemes anywhere, but that's where the team has worked through and looked at what they could cut out of that are, some of it nice to have, some of it the ideal to have to get the schemes working well, but we've tried to cut it back. But that's just a general comment on what you see in front of you there in terms of if it says scaled, the team has done some work on how we cut back the cost of that particular item.
Yeah, just to answer your question directly, like I'm very frugal. I make sure that all my team do it as efficient as possible. All the stuff, I just take on board your comments, and we will strive to make it as efficient and less gold-plated. Anyway, good answer.
Yeah, I know. We don't want to underdo it. We need to make sure, figuratively, we build it out of titanium, but we don't need to go gold plated as well. Ms. Nichols.
I just wanted to point out, like, a lot of these budgets are placeholders as well, like they're very round figures, like $1 million, so there's going to be more business case and scoping behind the scenes that will come up for further discussion later on. And also in terms of funding these projects, you talk about rural water schemes, not many people on them, and how that's going to be a uniform rate or how it's going to work. These are going to be options that are going to be consulted on as well. So we're still at the early stages. We're just wanting to work out what the budgets what the projects we should progress with are. And then there's a lot of work to be done behind the scenes, options analysis, and that's going to be consulted on over April. So these figures aren't hard and fast. They may still move, and we do have opportunity to discuss them further before they're approved in June.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Hale.
Yeah, no, just a comment through the chair, like I'm quite satisfied with the explanation that our staff have given us. And I know this is a very difficult decision to make, but I think they just need the green light initially, just so you can work on a more detailed business case. So if we don't, I'm satisfied with all three, like recommendations as going. If we don't move ahead, then we're just going to be stalling and kicking the can down down the end, and it's not going to be helpful for the community or us moving forward. So I'm just supportive. I'm comfortable where things are at. I would trust that the team will do all they can to make sure that the figures and things are as less as possible. But at the same time, we need to ensure that the risk for the community is minimised as much as possible in terms of healthy, safe drinking, water. So I know that I'm probably in the I know that others around the table may not agree with me, but I'm very satisfied and I'm trusting with what the staff are saying, and that we should just move ahead with these recommendations.
Okay, do we have more questions? Okay, thank you, Councillor Blackstone, and then Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you. I just, I had a question relating to item 4495, the Aquatic Centre upgrade entry. I just note that's on both lists. I just wondered if they were two different things or the same thing that's been doubled up. And I'm also just had a question around, I don't want to go through item by item, but when I look through in general terms, I still see a number of projects which, in my view, I would consider nice to haves. And I just wonder whether we've kind of put that lens over it again, just to have a final check. And I can give a couple of specific examples if that's helpful, but I don't really intend to do that. And then I had just some general questions for clarification. So the playground upgrade that's planned for the Oamaru Public Gardens, I just wondered where that is on this list. I couldn't see it, and I just wanted to understand how that's being funded, and if we still consider that necessary, if it is funded more locally than through a grant, a central government grant. The Discovery Hub, Whitestone Waitaki Geopark Discovery Hub item, I just thought for the benefit of the community, it would be good to flag, because that's a significant sum of money listed here. It would be good just to flag the makeup of where those funds are sourced, if successful. And then also wanted to confirm through the annual plan process, we had the eyesight contract kind of listed as part of our list for consideration. I just wanted to understand if that's part of BAU. And then one final question, has there been any, so we've removed the requirement as was the steer given in earlier sessions, the interest in not going ahead with the Avery improvement project, and there's the demolition of the Avery listed in there. I just felt the feeling in the room was more around replacing that with something more like a different outcome for the environment, as opposed to just cutting it all together. So we would steer the funds that were to be directed for that into some sort of environmental initiative fit for 2024.
So I believe the Public Gardens playground is in the current year, but the rest of it I'll hand over to someone.
I haven't written them all down. So the aquatic centre, sorry, it is in 2 lists. It was cut out, but then at the last minute, the team actually asked me to add it back in. And it's not too expensive, so that can be covered. In terms of other items that you want to change, I just emphasise my point before that this is draft. It's going to be out for consultation. When we put it out for consultation, obviously people are going to see the income side of it as well. So how it's all funded, there'll be different options about how much people pay. Obviously, we're going to be going out with the rates increase, and we'll get a steer from the community how high they accept that. So that may change projects that are in and out as well. We may have to have a total another look at it in May after consultation. So this is still very draft. The eyesight is business as usual. So the 100K grant for the next 2 years is contained in our business as usual budgets to keep that running. The geopark. So all you're seeing on this side is the expense of the project, but over half of that funding we expect from the government through the Tourism Innovation Fund. And then there's also 345K expected from the Renaka as well, and our contribution is closer to 450 at the moment. But obviously that's a moving thing as well. So we're keeping up communication around that. And we've talked about the aviary. Is that everything?
Did we talk about the aviary? That first one was about the playground.
Oh, you talked about playground.
Yeah. So that's correct.
Maybe I didn't read the room right with the aviary, but obviously I think we mentioned last time that it needs to be removed for health and safety purposes. And then we took the budget fully out, but if there was some environmental initiatives, if that fund needs to go in for another purpose, let me know.
Well, one thought that, if I'm welcome to make a comment.
Sure thing.
One thought that came to mind was, or at the time it was expressed as well, was around initiatives that would attract native species or enhance environmental outcomes in the kind of natural space. And we see somewhere in the report today about roadside verge that has a rare plant species. So, you know, there's literally hundreds, if not thousands of hectares of roadside verging that could be enhanced. And Councillor Thompson has an experience with that in his days down in Southland. And you drive the roadsides down there and see the benefits of that hard working initiative today.
Just on that, I think, yeah, those are things we're looking at, and I think you've seen recently the little project that parks have around the wildflowers within the Oamaru Public Gardens. I think at this stage, we're looking at that as more how we do things rather than a specific project as such. And I think we've got an opportunity to, if we want to pursue that further, to embed that. We've got, the Parks and Open Spaces Strategy Review, and we've also got, a contract that will come up for renewal as well. And I think rather than necessarily seeing that as a project cost in there, I think that's the opportunity to look at how we build that into our business as usual and the way that we manage, those spaces, rather than a project that needs to be invested in. It's about, how we use the existing spend rather than necessarily a project of enhancement, is my suggestion on that.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, I've got a few questions on page, I'm looking at the page on the agenda, which I can't, it's vanished now. I think it's page 74. It's the one with the projects that Councillor Beckler has referenced. I would, however, like to go back to roading very quickly if I could. And I noticed there's a whole series of proposals there, drainage renewals, footpath renewals, etc., all reduction in scope to match budget availability. And I also noticed a new project, roading resilience project, again reduced to match availability, but supposedly to cost $1,666,670 in the first year. First of all, I don't know what it is. I'm not sure we do. I would suggest that could possibly be moved out a year if the budget is available. And I would also like to see a little bit more thought go into some of those other renewals, not simply to reduce in scope to match budget availability, but to reduce in scope to justify genuine requirement or need. I cite again, I've had it explained that there's issues below the surface of roads, but when you see the whole of Tamar Street being resealed and the piecemeal patchwork along Tyne and Harbour, then I don't think that's necessarily a good outcome. And I would prefer to see maybe a bit of sweating assets with regard to resealing some roads, especially on those that are not quite so intensely used, to ensure that that other work that it might be more required is achieved. So I would ask officers to look closely at not just reducing in scope to match budget and availability, but also possibly reducing in scope to match genuine requirement. I'm also curious to know whether we actually do anticipate to spend more than $3 million on the Kakanui Bridge in the next year. And finally, the very last item on that page, it's a Parks and Rec one. How come we're looking at 800,000 for the adjusted Puketapu track? They all seem to me to be quite large amounts. Well, those are roading questions, and one Park and Rec one that I would actually like to raise or get answers to, and then perhaps the next page if I could later on.
Just a general comment on the roading one. This is a significant, scaling down of our roading program. I think it needs to be acknowledged. We've seen, as in the water space and the roading space, costs have, escalated considerably. So, at the moment, what you've got before you is a decision to not maintain our roads as well as we do at the moment. And we know public sentiment out there at the moment from our surveys is that they don't feel that we are maintaining them enough as it is. But that is a scaling back. So I'm not sure this is, sweating assets, but, a conscious decision based on the constraints we have financially that our roads will get worse over the next few years. I don't want to relitigate the discussion over resurfacing of roads to protect the pavement underneath and the long-term costs of not maintaining them and the desire to have proactive maintenance that is less costly rather than reactive maintenance that is more costly, but we seem to be going back in over that discussion again. But I think you need to be aware this, if you accept this as it is a decision to scale back in our roading maintenance area. It is a decision that our roads in some areas will be worse. And I know you raised earlier about wanting to still consider sealing roads in the one of the previous items. I think we're not in that space of looking at sealing roads. We roads that are currently not sealed, we won't have the budget to seal them and then maintain them. We could be in the space of looking at roads that are currently sealed that are not well utilised, of moving them back to being unsealed roads. That's where we're at financially in terms of our overall and our roads program. But I'll hand over in terms of some of those other specific questions.
Can anyone, the Puketapu track, the Kakanui Bridge, are we really going to spend 4 million on those two in the next year? That's a combined total.
I think I'll say Puketapu track. That's not all of our money. The onus is on, that's the total budget, but with money coming in from different sources. So some of that is the decision that was made earlier last year around allocation of better off funding in line with the community board's wishes, and then the expectation that the community raise the other funds to do the other elements of that project should they wish. I must admit, since coming back in the new year, I haven't brought up in terms of where that particular project is at, but certainly that's their plan to move that forward, but it's subject to them raising the funding. I'm not sure of the answer to the other question. I don't know whether we have anyone around the table who can provide information on that.
I don't know any more about the Kakanui Bridge, but we have talked about it a lot previously. Do you know? No? Is there a briefing next week?
So we've got a workshop coming up on that, and in the next couple of weeks, and then a decision that we're going to be making subsequent to that. So there will be a lot more. It will be a public access briefing. So this is an important topic, and it's not. There's a lot of reasoning behind what the bridge is made of and why one single lane versus double lane and so forth, and that's important for the public to know as much as for us to know. But yeah, they are looking. I mean, if the money, we don't want things in the air if we're just not going to achieve them. But we have got the money committed to there. Obviously, some of those projects include other money as well. It's not just the rates impact. And the bridge will be one of those. Certainly, Puketapu is one of those. There's a lot of other external funding we want them to make sure they do, and we've got them better off funding for Palmerston that's going into that. Councillor Blackford, and then Councillor Percival, and then Councillor McCone, and then back to Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you.
Mr. Palmley's comments around the level of service and roading just kind of triggered a memory during the last annual plan process. Councillor Hopkins was supported, I believe from memory, in the request to give better consideration around dust suppression, and I think given the direction we're heading in, I just wanted to understand if that's on the radar anywhere, if that should be listed as a project or it's just under BAU, or how should that sit?
Good question.
Certainly not listed as a project. I'd need to check, where it fits in with the BAU plans at the moment, but it clearly doesn't fit with the contract that we have at the moment for the maintenance of the road. So we need to.
But we could.
Our Aussie friend, Councillor Thompson's got his hand up. He might be able to respond to that one. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and g'day, coppers. The two things I wanted to, the dust suppression that we spoke about, I understand that the roading department were looking at options, but it was in terms of options that could come back to us as to what is feasible. The question that was raised about Puketapu track, I would just like to flag the fact that the better off funding that is we're looking at as the seed funding for that. If we don't get our act together and get the thing going, we have to give that money back. So that's why it's still sitting in the plan. Mr. Van der Spek could confirm that we're having regular and ongoing meetings with the Puketapu Trust, with them now out searching for public funding.
Any comment? Here.
Yes, we met with the Puketapu Trust, I think it was 2 weeks ago. They're in the process of looking for local support in their community, both in terms of materials, but also potentially resources and labour that can help with the track. They're also in the process of preparing funding applications to external funders such as the Otago Community Trust, etc. So council's allocation at this point of time is the 200,000 from the better off funding. And the community has been, or the trust is aware that any additional funding from council would have to be determined through an annual plan or an LTP process. If they're also aware that if we don't get some traction, some additional resources, circa second half of 2024, that council will have to consider the use of that better off funding and potentially reallocate it to other work if we haven't made headway.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Percival.
Yeah, there's close on 380 projects or items on the list we have in front of us. And I guess we want answers for 379 of them. But that's a little bit out of hand because we do be here for 25, 26 weeks doing it. But there's a couple of things. There's the district plan review post-proposed plan, which over the next 4 years is in excess of 2.5 million. I don't understand why it is so high. when considering we spent probably 6-7 million on it already. That's the first one I'd like to be explained to me. The second one, I believe, information I just got, that the WWG Discovery Hub is 3 million in the next 3 years. Now, I believe that's part of the geopark nonsense. And we were told when we promoted and accepted the geopark applications and all that nonsense, we were told it was going to cost the ratepayer nothing, but the ratepayer would benefit extremely by this. It looks like the ratepayer is paying through the nose for this thing. Now, that to me is absurd, and that could be wiped off immediately. But regardless of the first question, I'd like to know why it's going to cost another 2.5 million in the next 3 years to do the Jolly District Plan.
Mr. Cook, here's your moment. Just turn it. Look, yeah.
Okay, as the councillor Percival is aware, we've been working through the district plan through the district plan review subcommittee, and got it almost to the proposed stage. That's still dependent on the council decision later on. I have been encouraging councillors to move it through the proposed stage because it continues to cost us money whilst we're in the draft stage. The process, once it goes to proposed, as we call for submissions from the community. Those submissions then have to be worked through and republicised, and call for further submissions on those submissions. So once the proposed plan gets published, it's at least another year, if not longer, under the statutory process to get the plan adopted. There'll then be inevitably some hearings, which panel will need to sit through and be involved in. There'll need to be further subject matter expertise to inform those decisions for the panel, and then it will finally become the operative plan. It is a long process, and the faster we move through it, the less it will cost the ratepayer.
It's all well and good, Roger. I don't really understand what you're saying, because we employ people to do this work. Unfortunately, we do use outside consultants. So I don't see where you get the 2.5 million. I really don't. So we'll leave it at that. I'll go on to question 376.
So you've raised a question of sorts. I think we need to hear a response if there is one.
These activities cost money. We need specialist input in certain aspects. We need to have things reviewed under certain criteria. We have to have it legally reviewed. We have to have it checked for integration to make sure it all talks to each other and the language is common. It is a significant project, the district plan review. Always has been and always will be until the legislation changes.
Did you have something else?
In terms of the Discovery Hub, it's the one that Tim asked me about before. So it doesn't show, this is just the expense side of it. It's the Geopark Discovery Hub. So there's $3 million expense side, you can see here, but we get over 2 million funded from the government. And so the cost to our ratepayers, we've currently put in a placeholder of 450K. If successful.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, look, some of the, again, quite quickly, looking at some of the smaller tech items, but they all add up on the last page of projects. I'm looking at the project freezer building feasibility study, 80,000 this year, 204,000 the year after. I'm looking at the adjusted 2024 Harbour Railway Work Programme, 40,000. I'm looking at Oamaru Airport improvements to fencing, 50,000. These are all in this current year. I'm looking at the proposal down the bottom for a new curbside collection service, 400,000 this year and 3 million in the second. Not discussed, not debated, not improved as yet. And I don't believe it should be in there. I'm looking at Waitaki identity and storytelling, a small amount, 75,000, I think. Land use diversification, 50,000. And I'm also wondering why, at the very bottom where we have a reference to the art gallery, museum and so on, I would like to flag that we should be this year including a formula and mechanism by which we can impose an out of district charge. So my question would be, why isn't that in there? And my question regarding all the others is, are they really all that essential? And do they actually have to be done? Do we need to spend 80,000 this year on a freezer building feasibility study? Do we need to spend 50,000 on airport fencing? Do we need 40,000 on the harbour railway work program? What is it? They're small amounts, but they all add up. Look after the pennies and the pounds look after themselves. I seem to remember Mr. Palmer's Scottish mother saying exactly that.
Just for the record, my Scottish mother never said that. I think go back to important clarification. You're saying about, oh, these things aren't approved. There's a lot of things that aren't approved in here yet. There are placeholders in the budget because we need to plan forward, which will be subject to coming before council for final approval. Yeah, we talked a lot about water schemes already. There are many other things in here. Also a reminder that you're looking at the cost, but you haven't got the sources of expenditure in here. So some of the things you were questioning there are funded by better off funding that have been already approved by council. So cutting them would be a good exercise in giving money back to the government, really, which I'm not sure we want to do. We want more money from the government, not give money back to the government.
So if I may then ask a supplementary question and one final one then. So what you're saying is that this list is still subject to modification and reduction by us. That appears to be what you've just said to me. The other question, perhaps to you and to Amanda, central government has seen fit to say across the board 5, 6, 7% cuts. Would you favour such an approach across the board, not to say to projects, but to departments? If we said we wanted a 5% funding cut across the board, doable, yay or nay?
Oh, so I mean, going back to your first point, this is a mixed bag. There are some things in here that you've approved already, and there's some things in here that are placeholders that are subject to your approval. So it's a mixed thing in terms of forming a budget view for the next 10 years. In terms of your 5-6% cut across the board, yes, it's doable. I would recommend it. It's not desirable for a number of reasons, and I come from working 10 years plus in austerity Britain, where a number of councils pursued that approach, and it leads to unintended consequences, which is why a number of councils, including ones that I work for, decided on a transformation approach, which was looking at how you get more efficiency, which takes planning, and it sometimes takes time to achieve better results than just simply cutting things and setting arbitrary targets that you're not fully conversant with the longer term impacts of. So you've agreed a transformation program, which is looking to ensure that we become more efficient. We are doing work around that, and how does that feed into our long-term financial strategy and the financial picture going forward, so that we can get genuine efficiency within our operations, which will mean being able to deliver the same with less in some cases, and giving you options of delivering more within the same budget. And those are things that we'd want to discuss with you. So it's within your gift as and within your remit as a governance team to be able to set those targets. I wouldn't recommend those at this stage. I think you have other options open to you to get the operating costs down. Transformation is part of that, and there are other things which we've had brief discussions about, some briefings on, in terms of the financial strategy, which we need to discuss in more depth, that would in my view, be smarter options in terms of getting the net cost of running the services we have down.
Councillor Linwood, then Councillor McCone.
I just have a quick question about youth development. I see that there's nothing in here. Does that mean that there was something planned? And just looking at it, I would have thought that that would be more important than some of the other projects that are listed on here.
So there's a line for youth development, it's got no amounts.
I think that was withdrawn last annual plan, if I recall correctly. I think that was a project that was sitting under Helen Alga. And that particular project line was being built in with other stuff they already had. I think they already engaged some youth in that work area at that time. So I think that's now become a BOU line. Where there are building cadets and other things that they've actually taken those budget lines out as well, which is similar to that youth development. They've taken those budget lines out rather than have them as a specific project. They'll build them in to the costings of what we're delivering in our services, is what I understand there is. Correct, Mr. Parnley?
Councillor McCone, and then we're going to break for morning tea.
Yeah, look, I'll just go back to what I started off with, really. We've got two major projects underway and, we're already pretty heavily committed to those. Are all these projects on this page doable? One question. The current model we have is not working, and I know some of it's unforeseen and been put on us, but our expenditure is way above our means and needs severely looked at. We can't keep rating to cover deficits and have to be accounted for projects which rely on funding. We have to decide now which is a need and not a want. So, this here, I think we need to go through it with a fine tooth comb. I think we've got to bite the bullet somewhere, and the sooner you start biting the bullet, the sooner you fix it. Essential services, roading and water are always going to be at the coalface for expenditure, and they have unknowns in them that you just don't know what comes around the corner. So you've got to be prepared for those. But I think, considering the financial costs of all these projects now, I think we need to get these projects almost itemised and inside a glass jar or somewhere where they have a list of what they need to be done, allowing for the unknown, of course. But, prioritise, be it under legislation or renewals where it's more prudent to actually renew than fix it. And I think we've got to look at these across all departments. That's what I've got to say.
Thank you. We're going to break morning tea now. We'll come back and we've got Councillor Kells with a question or comment, and Councillor Blackler to carry on this discussion. So if we can keep it as close to 10 minutes, right? And we'll be back shortly. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thanks very much for your patience. Councillor Cowles, you're there. You had your hand up before the break. You got a question or comment you want to make?
Yeah, thanks very much. Hey, look, I think on all of this, it's been mentioned a couple of times so far that we've, obviously got the opportunity to revisit some of the stuff as we go through the annual plan. And, we can already see that some stuff's been scaled and changed and reduced. I think we've got an opportunity moving forward to be able to do this. But I'd say I'm overall pretty comfortable with at least where we're heading, and that obviously we have to keep looking at these and keep refining as we go forward. But hearing from both Amanda and Alex that this isn't the be all and the end all today, I'd be pretty comfortable with where we're sitting with what's here, knowing that we've got the opportunity moving forward to be able to refine some of these projects further if desired. I'd see a number of them here that are obviously are done through things like the Better Off funding and those sorts of things. And so, I think we've got that opportunity as we move forward.
Thank you. Councillor Blackler.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Kuchar. It was just a question on the back of Councillor Linwood's question and the shifting of some things into BAU. So in the list where we've got initiatives not being progressed, if any of those items are now being incorporated into a new project or into BAU, that would be specified in the comments column as is the case for the building cadet. Is that correct? Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Sorry, just see if his hands are up. Councillor Hopkins.
Well, I just had a very quick question in relation to the items that are not to be prioritised. If I can we move to those or?
Yes.
Well, these are things that I would just ask officers to reconsider. I'm a bit puzzled and unhappy about the idea of using volunteers for the Oamaru stream and deferring that beautification for a year. I think that's another potential asset that enhanced would have huge spin-offs and implications and benefits. And I would like to see that perhaps brought forward to the 2025 year, and also perhaps not reliant in this instance entirely on volunteers, because that might delay or make the project more problematic. And I would also suggest to the Harbour Committee and to officers, I notice that we're deferring the floating pontoon for the rowing club and the Holmes Wharf floating pontoon. I would like to suggest we explore ideas of sponsorship or branding for those that might see them being purchased or built with somebody who maybe buys naming rights or something like that. That I think could be I think they would be hugely beneficial for the harbour generally, augment and enhance the use of the wharves. And I'd like to see us be a bit more proactive about trying to find new ways to fund those and make them happen sooner rather than later.
Any comments, staff? No. Okay. Councillor Blackler.
Oh, just on the back of Councillor Hopkins' comments, Mr. Van der Speck might be able to answer this, but at the last harbour area subcommittee meeting, there was the conversation about if the floating jetty wasn't to take place, there could be a minor change to the access there as a result of that project possibly being canned. So I just wondered if that had been incorporated anywhere.
As I said at the meeting, I'll come back to the Harbour Area Committee with comments on that. I'm still seeking those comments, so I'll respond in due course.
Just a quick question for me on roading. One of the things I want to make sure is that we don't invest less rate funding in roading. We know NZTA Waitaki has issues around matching its share with whatever we put in, but I think if we need to, or the last thing I wanted us to do is actually reduce what we're putting in, at least from rates. Is there any reduction proposed, or are we keeping that at the same level?
So when we looked at this at ELT, what was in the original cuts that we briefed on when we were going through projects last year was reflecting an increase in costs. So this actually, the proposals in here keep it, level in terms of, the amount of funding we put in it. I think in looking at Amanda, it might be a slight increase on previous years, but what it doesn't reflect is that, the increased costs we've seen in that area. So, we're maintaining the level of funding, but you're going to get less for your funding going forward.
Okay, thank you. The other is just, if I can go back to water, one of my concerns is that we're kicking many cans down the road. We shouldn't ignore that. We shouldn't pretend we're not. Sometimes, though, I think we run the risk of losing the efficiency around grouping aspects together, and in an attempt to stage things. I'm concerned maybe that we end up paying more than we would if we actually just got on and did the whole job in one go. So, question to Mr. Pacey, is there some elements of that where you would, using your professional advice, that you would advise us to actually put that back into year one and make sure it gets done and get the efficiency through that?
Yes, thanks for the question, Nick Future. As was said earlier, these are placeholder budgets. They're an indication of the likely amount we're likely to spend. When we go through the issues and options report, consideration will be made as to whether it makes sense to defer or stage part of it, or whether we should be doing it more efficiently at the start. And if that's the case, depending on the scope of the project and the size of the project and how many dollars it's worth, we'll come back and recommend to council effectively a revised budget at that time.
Okay, thank you. I'm satisfied with that. Any other comments, questions? Councillor McCone, you're happy to move? We'll do these separately, but you're happy to move number one? Yeah, I'm happy to second that. Any discussion on the going to the enhanced annual plan rather than the 10 years of long-term plan? Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Kitcher. I support this, and I think it might be courtesy of us to thank the government for giving us the option, to be perfectly honest, along with actually congratulating them for proposing local solutions in the local water down well space as well. Putting that aside, what I have one concern, and I'll register it now. In my view, the enhanced annual plan is not an opportunity to delay or dither. We can, okay, we're not going to do the LTP this year. Well, we can postpone the plan, but we can't postpone the crisis. The Mayor has said, and I publicly supported him, that the system is broken. And I think it is. And I think it needs to be not only repaired, but replaced. And I think work on how we replace it begins now. It can't wait 12 months, can't wait 12 years, no, 12 weeks even, in my view. So we need to begin that now. And the enhanced annual plan needs, in my view, therefore, to include things like a clear indication for the public of how we're going to pay for things like the Sports and Events Centre. We've said that there's 5 million of funding that won't come from rates. So we need, I think, to indicate alternative sources, and where possible, provide as much detail as we possibly can. We need to commit to beginning work on finding alternative sources of funding. We need to commit to actually saying to the public, this is a huge problem. Councils around the country are facing enormous costs. We want to try and ease that burden, and that means making some tough decisions and everybody joining in on those. And in that regard, I would just note, I know the Mayor asked about how he would lead the process, and clearly he does and must. But in a sense, I would also argue that there's no I in team. And in the end, it's the obligation of every person around this table, elected member around this table, to lead the enhanced annual plan and long-term plan process. It's not fair to ask the mayor to carry the can alone and be the sole person who apologises or explains things. We have to, as a group, say, we're leading this, we're taking ownership, we're taking responsibility, and we will collectively cop the flak rather than leave that to one person. So leadership, the captain leads the team, but the team has to play the game. So I would say that there's an obligation on all of us and on the community and on advocates within the community who actually often criticise us, sometimes legitimately, sometimes not, to accept the challenge that in a crisis, there's no such thing as a soft option or an easy decision. So right now we've got to make tough decisions and make them honestly, collectively, openly, and share the responsibility and the outcomes.
Thank you very much. And to be very clear, it was not, my question was not about not sharing, not involving, not any of that. These are decisions that we all need to make and we all need to be responsible for. But the Local Government Act is very specific in saying that the mayor leads the LTP and the annual plans, etc. And yeah, that was just a question I've asked because I don't feel like I've been able to do that. I think we haven't got to quite where we should be today, because there's been some challenges around that. But yeah, it's trying to make sure that we get on to the best foot we can, that we actually get on, and that we provide the community with an annual plan which does everything that year one of the long-term plan would do. That is as affordable as possible. That is making sure that ratepayers' needs are taken care of, and the affordability issues are addressed as best as we can. So it's, I have asked for staff to do it in the context of it being year one of 10 years, and the other 9 years shouldn't be ignored for this annual plan. And I think they've taken that on board and have given us what they have given us. But yeah, it's very much a process that all of us need to own and all of us need to take responsibility for, because it's what we are here for. Any other speakers to the motion? Okay, I'm going to put number one there. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, that's carried. Do we have a further motion? No one's keen to move anything? Yeah.
I'll move 2 and 3, and I'd like to move a fourth that I'm just writing now. And the fourth recommendation I'd like to move is as follows: that council agrees the list of initiatives for inclusion and those not to be progressed are indicative and include items yet to be finally considered and confirmed by council.
Okay, people clear on what was moved then?
Well, yes, I'll read it again. That council agrees the list of initiatives, remember we're voting on 2 and 3 as well, agrees the list of initiatives for inclusion and those not to be included progressed are indicative and include items yet to be finally considered and approved by council. It's just basically saying what the state department said before, that some of these are irreplaceable.
Governance advisor is.
I'll just have a question on that last point. Councillor Hopkins, you said considered and confirmed by council, and then when you read it out again, you said approved.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Which would you?
Don't mind.
Which are you moving?
You choose, Madam Government Advisor.
No, that's not my decision, Mr. Chair.
Confirmed.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
It's confirmed. And Councillor Percival has seconded that. Okay, so any speakers to those 3 points? I will put them separately. So any discussion on any of them?
Well, look, I think, sorry, very briefly, my view now based on that is that rather than try and amend the list of 2 and 3 at this stage, I share Councillor Halaleda, or the Deputy Mayor's view that this is a good list. It's a lot of work's gone into, a lot of thought. We've had I think, very honest and persuasive responses from officers. I'm prepared to leave the list as they are at the moment, with the proviso that this recommendation 4 still has sway, if you like, or has future implications.
Mr. Palmer.
So if it helps just to add a comment to that in terms of where we're at on the process, the approval of the list would be then form the basis of developing, the draft consultation document, which would then come back to you, again. And then when you've undertaken consultation, that's when you start making final decisions on what is included, in the list, and therefore the budget going forward. And then following that, some of those items would need to come back to you again for final approval of, business cases for, investment. So this isn't your only bite of this cherry. That this is a process that's ongoing, continuing to review this. So you're not making a final decision on what goes forward today. This is the next step in the process, a decision on what goes forward into the draft consultation that comes back to you.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, I'll put number 2, which is as written there. Those in favour, please say aye. Against? That's carried. Number 3, as written. Those in favour, please say aye. And against? That's carried. And number 4, does anyone need it read out again? Or no? Okay, I'll put it. Those in favour, please say aye. And against? That is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, staff, members who have played a role, of those in the chamber, and I know many outside the chamber that have had input into getting us to this point. It is difficult trying to make decisions with such uncertainty as the overall context, and I think it's definitely the right decision to at least get on and do year 1. Get that sorted, get some definite responses from the government on implications for year 2 through 10, and go from there. So anyway, we look forward to continuing this process and getting something out to the public that they can then submit on. Thank you. Now moving to 7.2, the backflow prevention device installation repayments, and Councillor Pacey.
Nice. Thank you, Mayor Kircher. So I'll just briefly introduce this report. I'll take the report as read. I just want to highlight a couple of things. The decision report in front of you is not about whether the project goes ahead or not. It's about confirming funding. The Water Services Act requires water suppliers to have arrangements in place to protect consumers from the risk of backflow. We've identified that there's 215 high-risk properties across the district, meaning if they had a backflow event, there's a possibility of causing death. Sounds very dramatic, but it's a reality. 115 medium-risk properties across the district, meaning they can endanger health. So the backflow program has been in our water safety plans. First one was adopted late 2000s. And we've been installing backflow prevention devices on residential properties for the last 25 years. We're now moving on to the high and the medium risk backflow installations in the budget for this current financial year, and we're planning to chip away at the installation of them over the next few years. The project is non-negotiable. We just want to know how to fund it. The WDC policy adopted in 2021 says property owners will cover the install costs, as they are the reason that the risk exists. All consumers cover the ongoing costs. So that's the ongoing maintenance of the devices themselves, because there is a a greater public good aspect there as well. We're not proposing to amend or subsidise the capital cost. We suggest property owners are given 5 years to pay off with interest to encourage them to pay the money straight up. Just ask any questions.
Thanks, mate. Did you just say for the past 25 years we've been installing residential backflow preventers?
Yeah, that's correct. So the residential ones are those Toby boxes at the boundary. They're low risk ones. Also, any businesses that have had a building consent or a new connection in the last 25 years have been required to install or required to install backflow prevention devices, or we have.
Thank you. So is this supplementary prior to 2021? How has that cost been allocated?
Yeah, so the residential ones funded from depreciation because they're renewing effectively Toby's, and the commercial ones, which are obviously a non-standard, they've been paid for by the property owner. Also, new connections have been paid for by the property owner as well.
Councillor Percival.
Yeah, Marty, one explanation and one question. Explanation of what recommendation to details, what does that mean? I don't quite understand it. And the question is, do property owners have the option of installing backflow units that conform to WC requirements themselves? And if not, why not?
Probably answer two of those together, actually. Thanks for that. The second recommendation is there's potential for property owners who already have backflow prevention devices installed for us to work with them to move them to the boundary if they comply and hence reduce the costs. There's also a potential if the property owner has a larger connection than they actually need that we could install a smaller backflow prevention device at a smaller cost. And then thirdly, if a property owner has multiple connections, then there's the opportunity to rationalise those multiple connections rather than installing multiple backflow prevention devices. And the other piece was if they've got one, if there's an option for them to pay for one, or for them to install one themselves at the boundary to the right standards, that's currently against our policy. Our policy made it clear that we want to own the devices and maintain the devices to ensure that backflow protection is there all the time.
So that would then be an ongoing cost in perpetuity for the council to be maintaining and monitoring the effectiveness of those backflows. Will that be charged to the property owner, or will WDC take the loss?
Yeah, so the ongoing maintenance and ensuring that the working is a public good for all of the water supply. So it's all of the water supply consumers as is currently proposed would pay the cost of it as opposed to the individual business owner.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, Marty, thank you for the report. I initially thought, why don't we do what all the other councils do? Because you do say that the Water Services Act 2021 allows council to require the owner of the premises to reimburse the supplier for the cost of installation, maintenance and ongoing testing. But when I think about it, how would you abstract one item of the supply network in perpetuity from all the rest of it? And would that not require a sort of an ongoing targeted rate in perpetuity based on the sort of amortized cost of maintenance and testing? And I suppose supplementary to that, if we were to require owners to meet that cost, at the moment there's costs here between just under 4 and just under 30,000, depending on the property. But if we were to include maintenance and testing, how much additional cost would be imposed on property owners? Do you know?
in the order of educated guess, sort of $100 to $200 to do an inspection, depending on what needs done to it per year.
And I presume, Amanda, you would need a targeted rate for that, would you? If we were going to isolate one part of the network and say, your gym has to pay for that bit and everybody has to pay for all the rest, it would require a targeted rate on the property, would it not?
Or a bill, an account.
Well, yeah.
I mean, we have large water users who are metered and they receive bills, rather than a rates demand. So it wouldn't, the system's set up for that and that would make sense to do it that way. Councillor Blacklow.
It was just supplementary. I just wanted to know, would the water, the current process for, reading water, would that kind of be incorporated into the maintenance kind of schedule? Would that kind of individual be able to undertake that work?
To answer your question, generally not. But the person who's doing this inspection is an independently qualified person for doing that sort of thing. You could group them together, but you end up paying more to do the water meter inspection.
Yeah.
At the same time, so we'd have to. In some instances, it might work. In some instances, it might not.
I just want to talk briefly on the contract and concerned that we're not bundling everything together, and we're using, for the larger parts of the larger backflow prevention devices, that we're going to use the day works rates for a contractor. Is there not an ability to actually put it out for tender and see what the response is, and then have the default as the day works rate?
To answer the question, there is ability to do that. We believe it would be more costly. The issue with the larger devices is they're not so straightforward. Effectively, what you're going to get is you're going to get a contractor to price in significant risk, or there's going to be lots of variations. We thought it made more sense for our maintenance contractor with the larger ones. We have a relationship with the consumers, they install them, then they maintain them. That's just the intent of it. The smaller ones, we thought we could get good value for money by tendering it. Yeah.
And do you know what the overall budget would be for all of those that are over that 25 millimetre diameter?
Okay, background to me.
Chat GPT and
so the larger one.
Sorry, microphone.
Sorry, the larger ones, we're looking at about 200K.
Okay.
No.
Still typing too.
200 to 300K. Hang on. Finish typing, please, Caitlin. In that order.
Okay.
Of a $2 to $2.5 million job.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Be careful with your permission. I'll move the recommendations.
Councillor McCone, you had your hand up for a potential question, or?
And I'm just getting my head around the estimated cost. That's the cost of installation and the procedure. It's all, that's the total capital cost.
Yeah, so the total capital cost is over 4 years, I think, and it's just over 2 million, might be close to 2.5 million. That's in our project sheet here.
Yeah, no, I see that, but that's, so if it's going to my place, I'm up for $4,400. So that's digging the hole, putting it in, tightening it up, doing everything else that needs to be done. That's the total cost to me as an individual.
100% correct. That's our estimate at this time, and the estimates should be reasonably good if we've inspected sites.
If you're someone that requires it, I mean, if you're on restricted supply, it's already got that built in. And then as Marty has said, anyone who's basically done their development in the last 25 years will have that built in. Residential properties all have it built in. It's really those commercial ones that have been around longer and will be needing that. Okay, right. Moved by Councillor Hopkins. Do we have a seconder?
What? Oh.
Councillor Holding, thank you very much. Seconded that. You might want to speak to this one, Councillor Hopkins.
Oh, only briefly. I think Marty's right about the health risks. He's identified areas where this problem has arisen, not least of those being Havelock North. Although I thought that was also a contaminated well, but presumably the backflow exacerbated the problem there. Clearly, we can't ignore this. There are pressures from outside and above to do it. I think this is a pragmatic, practical, and effective solution. The cost will sit with the person who actually has the backflow system fitted. It is a variation of the polluter pays. I mean, these people are not polluting, but the risk is that from their property to contaminate the whole network. So from that point of view, I think that the way the proposal and the alternatives are fair, reasonable and prudent, and happy to vote in favour therefore.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay.
Just to reinforce Councillor Hopkins that we're just going to fulfil our legal duties here under Section 27 of the Water Services Act as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to put it then. Those in favour, please say aye. And against, and that is carried. Thank you. Right. Gosh, more water. Waihemo urban and rural water main upgrades, updated budget and scope. Marty, would you like to speak to this one, please? Only if you take the pay cut.
So I've just had an update. Apparently I was spot on with the numbers that I had. So. Sorry. Okay. Sorry, I'll carry on with Waihemo. So this project was originally to continue the good work that was done using the tranche funding in the urban township. That included a service level increase to include firefighting. Affordability concerns have prevented us kicking this project off, and the level of service change has not been adopted by you guys. We were proposing to bring it to you before we carried on with the project. So affordability concerns still exist, so we're proposing to strip back this year's 2023 budget from 6.6 million back to 3 million, and effectively do $3 million of work. The $3 million worth of work that we're proposing will be in the rural network, which is deteriorating, causing operational issues. So we have frequent leaks, like all time, and causing no water. A large amount of money has been invested in the trunk network. When Dunback and Goodwood were connected up to the Palmerston supply. But unfortunately, at the time, we didn't have funds to do the sidelines. So the sidelines were missed out. And they're the ones that are causing us problems. We need to upgrade them. Just take any questions as you have them.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is one of those situations where you absolutely have sweated the asset, and it's time to actually get on with the fix, permanent fix. So, Councillor Hopkins, your comments?
Yeah, Marty, look, I suppose Councillor Thompson will probably want to join in on this, but I get playing devil's advocate, and I'm thinking I live in Palmerston, right? And I've read this report, and I'm told that there's a fire, we can't put fires out, and so on. I've also seen that there are people in the rural area who are running out and don't have water in their tanks and so on. But I'm thinking to myself, there's more people in Palmerston than there are in those rural supplies. So if you apply the greatest good for the greatest number principle, why aren't we doing Palmerston first and the rural second? As I say, it's a devil's advocate question. I think I know the answer, but I feel it probably better to ask it honestly and in public.
Yeah, thanks for the question. The fact is that we're spending a lot more money in the rural area, and it makes sense to do those pipes now. What we are going to do as part of the LTP is put forward some further budget for doing works in the Palmerston Township, but there'll need to be a decision made around the level of service. So whether we replace the small-ish pipes in the Palmerston Township with similarly small pipes, or whether we go bigger and go firefighting. But you're talking another 3 odd million of increase in costs as opposed to just replacing the pipes like for like in town over the next 2 years.
There is some firefighting capacity in Palmerston water supply.
Correct. It's just not a gazetted fire area, so we just have a limited number of pipes and fire hydrants that are big enough to work like they want.
Yep. So, thank you. Councillor Blackwell.
I just had a question regarding the process to come to the this decision point around the reduction in scale and scope. Has the local community board been engaged with around their thoughts around where we're landing here?
Thanks. Effectively, we've deferred that decision out to year 1 and 2 of the LTP because there is because we haven't gone back to the community board and said, hey, we want to increase the level of service to provide firefighting. It's going to cost us much money. Who's going to have to pay for it? So what we're looking to do is divert this money into the rural area in the meantime, and then have that discussion later.
Councillor McCone. Councillor Thompson, you obviously feel obligated to make mention of this, seeing Councillor Hopkins has called you out.
Unfortunately, yes, he woke me up. No, the question, I totally accept Marty's rationale behind what's happening, but I think the overall question that we as councillors need to raise is that the second biggest town in Waitaki is expected.
Western.
It's a suburb of Oamaru. But we're expected to survive with third world firefighting facilities. And again, this is another symptom of where central government is expecting us to deliver standards and not actually giving us the funding or the tools to do it. We would love to provide that firefighting standard, but unfortunately, we have to cut our cloth according to the budget, and it's not possible.
Yeah, speaking from experience of being actually living in the second largest town in Waitaki, totally understand what you're saying on that, and I know that gaining some firefighting resilience in the town is important. I guess the challenge is how do we afford it, given the absence of funding from central government or any assistance from them. And yeah, I think we've got something in front of us, which is it is a compromise. We definitely need to fix some of the problems, at least if we can't afford to fix all of them in one go. So anyway, just go to any other questions, comments. Councillor Percival.
Yeah, Marty, if this goes ahead and the way it's pictured here, when do you think you draw down on that funding because of the tender process, the delays of getting things, contracts, availability, the whole 9 yards? When do you think you might draw down on that?
Very, very quickly. The contract's written. We didn't want to go out with the full amount just because we weren't. We didn't feel it was right. So the contract will probably go out next week or the week after.
Thank you. I'm happy to move the recommendation in front of us. So do we have a second to all that? Councillor Hopkins. As mentioned, some progress is better than no progress, and this is yeah, at least keeping some of the can at our feet and not kicking it down the road. Councillor McCain.
Yeah, totally agree. I'm just wondering about funding. Is that going to be ring fenced and charged to those people using that scheme, or is it going to be covered across the district?
Under our current policy, it will be ring fenced, but that's a discussion that we've got to have, and then one we need to have with the ratepayers around trying to keep everywhere affordable as much as we can. It's going to be a challenging discussion. Any other comments? Okay, I'll put it. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And against? That is carried. Thank you very much. I appreciate your presence around the table, and all the work that you and your team have done for all of the things you've been speaking about today. Right, moving on to road stopping part of Murray Road and Oamaru. Item 7.4. And
Judge, I'm happy to move. This is lay down misère in my view.
okay. Any discussion? Any question? No, it's a good report, well written. I think you're right. So I'm going to put it. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Oh, I can't remember. Guy. Yes. Sorry, I didn't acknowledge that one. Right, moving to 7.5, unnamed road off Pembroke Street in Waitaki. I've got questions first, and it's really around find my questions. It's around the how is the what's the basis of valuation? Is it valued as an unimproved block of land? And I note there's a number of neighbouring things on there. There's a driveway. There's a bit of a building. Do they have permission to be there? I don't know who might answer those. Are we looking at Eric? Okay.
We're all looking at Eric, and Eric's looking at the screen. Hoping no one's looking at him.
Feel free to put your microphone on.
I'll probably have to seek clarification on that.
Sorry, what was it?
I have to seek clarification from the property department on that.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, yeah, it's making sure we maximise the value that we do get from it and understanding what if it's got easements all over it and so on, it's obviously going to affect the value. Whereas actually, if it doesn't have easements on it, that makes it a very, much more valuable piece of land. So it would be good to know that in due course. I won't put you on the spot anymore by wanting that now. I think we do go through a process of valuation and so on, but it'd be good to understand that later in the piece. So, Councillor Percival, you were going to move 1, 2 and 3. Just seconded for that. Councillor McCone. Corridale councillors selling off bits of Wahimo. That's all good. Any further discussion on it? No, I'll put it. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
And against? That is carried. Okay, moving to the National Policy Statement for Urban Development Annual Monitoring Report for 2023. It's a very grand title for a very important report. Mr. Cobb.
Thank you, Mick. Chair, in the interest of time, I'll pass straight to our planning manager.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mayor Kircher. So this requirement's been around for a wee while, and obviously we've finally got a report out, but due to, I guess, our spatial plan work, district plan work, etc., that's taken priority. So we have actually been tracking some of these things that the NPS UD requires, but we've finally got them in a report now for you. More for information, but we do need a adoption of it, just so we can get it published and uploaded to our website. It will help inform in future our review of our spatial plan for Oamaru. It is Oamaru centric because of our size of the town. And we'll look to plug some of the other gaps as well in terms of that sort of housing infill that's not covered in the report at the moment, but that's probably sort of a longer term thing to kind of map and track that as we move through. So it really just is there to give you some idea of what's happening, what's been measured over the last few years, so you can see those trends. And yeah, it's really an informative type report as opposed to requiring anything to be done specifically as a result of it.
Thank you very much. Councillors, do you have any questions? Councillor Hopkins?
Yes, I do. Mr. Campbell, thank you for the report and also the National Policy Statement on Urban Development Monitoring Report that you produced. I have a couple of questions. On page 103 of our agenda, on page 3 of the report, we have population growth projections, medium, high and higher, but we haven't got low. I mean, indeed, in the last year, the Stats Department actually said that everywhere in Otago, other than Queenstown, had growth of less than 2%. And indeed, if you look at the figures here, we're saying that basically over 12 years, we've added 2,308 people, or 192 a year, which, so I'm wondering why we haven't included a low figure. Secondly, on the next page, we're now saying, we talk about population change as a key driver underlying the district's increased supply and demand for new housing, with our population now reaching record levels. And I think the words record levels are a tad alarmist. I mean, it's just higher than it has been. So I wouldn't mind a comment on that. On page 106, no, forget 106. On page 108 and 109, we make reference to the CBD in Oamaru, and we say that the CBD on page 108 has shown no definitive trend towards either growth or shrinkage in the last 3 years. And yet, if you look at the chart showing occupied or unoccupied and vacant buildings on the next page, they've gone up by 9 in 1 year. So I would have thought there's clear evidence there that that in fact there is shrinkage, and the report should say that. So I'm just wondering if you have comments on those matters, please.
I'll just, I want the easy one. I think if something reaches a level it's never been at, it is at a record level. It's by definition.
Well, yes.
If a sprinter beats the world record by 0.1 of a second, they've got the world record. They've reached record levels. It is the very definition of it. Right, that's me out of the way. Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins and the Mayor on that one. I guess with the table on table 1 on page 3 of the report, page 103, we can look to add low in there if you want that highlighted. Just expands the range, so it's probably not a biggie. Assuming everyone's happy that it would just state some numbers for that time period. I won't comment any further on the record comment. Yeah, going back to the occupancy levels, there can be some slight changes with shop makeup, that type of thing. So it did sort of trend from 129 to 139, and then again just shrunk slightly to 134. So it's kind of a bit of a blip the last 3 years. So it hasn't really taken off, but it was a bit of a blip as measured in 2023, and that's dropped slightly again. So again, we probably need at least 5 or 6 years to get a bit of a clearer trend. 3 years, particularly post-COVID, is probably a wee bit short term at this stage to indicate any really definitive trend there. But and we say that on page 109 after that last 2024 occupancy graph, we say it suggesting slightly more vacancies, but it's a short-term record, so it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand, but underplaying what appears to be and what anecdotally is more attracting more and more comment, i.e. the number of empty shops on the main street. But I accept your point that perhaps it is, we need a bit longer, although the signs aren't good at the moment, are they?
Yeah, I guess too that the following graphs with the occupancy types is quite interesting because that shows a wee bit of a shift. Perhaps slightly out of the, or particularly out of the retail when it was 61 down to 41 and 40. So there's been a bit of a shift, but it tends to be filled by other uses by and large. There's still some vacancies, but yeah, it's just kind of that shift away from retail is what's suggesting there, but still being occupied by and large.
Just a further question, just regarding that addition of the low figure. Is that something that's easy to do? Okay. I won't seek wider approval for that. We'll go with that. Councillor Blacksmith.
Thank you. The pie chart outlining the types of occupancy from 23 to 24, I think it is, there's a change on 4 till 3 accommodation. I was just wondering what have we seen a reduction in accommodation on Thames Street? Wasn't aware of anything going out of the system, but you know, that's not. I just wondered what the certainty of the data is, and then I just had an overarching question: is there any scope for us to put our own slant on these reporting mechanisms to capture information that we see as relevant to us? So, for instance, one of the things we might be interested in is how many homes in Oamaru or the wider district even are used for primary residential purposes versus Airbnb, or what's the makeup of rentals versus owner operator, so not owner operator, owner occupied. If you get what I mean, can we tailor the reporting data to kind of satisfy some of those general questions we might have?
Yes, thank you. In terms of the accommodation, I'm not sure what the drop off there of the one is, but we can go back and check where it might have come through. Certainly what the MPSUD is very much interested in those sort of things around rents and housing affordability. So if there are more Airbnbs or other types of occupancy, that can really impact on that. So I guess rents might be a bit of a quasi measure of that going forward if it's pushing rents up, but we can possibly work with the housing team, you know, around the housing strategy and that, and just see what other measures they may be looking at to help inform this type of report, because it does add quite a good, I guess, story to what's happening out there.
Yeah. Supplementary to that, I guess that the you know, I haven't seen the data in the most recent census, but the 2018 census showed there was 1,800 unoccupied dwellings in the wider district, and so I think that forms a part of the impact that we see on where people have a chance to live.
And just to clarify, this report, we are only constrained to Oamaru because of the size, but it would, I guess, give you a bit of a trend for Oamaru, whether it transpires to other parts of the district, particularly where there's more sort of tourism areas like Maraki or Marama, that type of thing might be a bit different trend to Oamaru in that sense.
Mr. Cook.
Thank you. I just think we need to be mindful of the purpose of this report. This is required under the MPS UD. This is the standard that it requires. And I think we need to be careful that we don't create something that's not required or is duplicated in other areas. So maybe in the housing strategy or the economic development side of things, we may have some of that information already covered. So we want to avoid duplication and we want to avoid repetition.
Thank you. I just had one question, and that was, do you have any idea what the report cost? just as an idea.
The report's been done in-house, so there's no external extra cost to council. When we've had summer students over various years, we've tried to get them to help with some of the data gathering. But yeah, it's an in-house report.
No, thanks very much. Anything else?
Mayor Kircher,
Would
with
you
your
like to move?
permission, I'll move.
Thank you, councillor Hopkins.
The council approves the publication of the attached national policy statement for urban development annual monitoring report for 2023 with amendments as agreed pursuant to section, et cetera.
With the amendment.
Oh, okay. With the amendment as agreed, yes, okay.
Thank you. Councillor Black, are you seconding that? Any further discussion? Those in favour, please say aye. And against, that is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Campbell. And thanks to your team. Right, looking at 7.7, 2022 to 23 progress reports from Lower Waitaki and Upper Waitaki zone committees. So we had the offer from other representatives of the zone committees to speak to this. We didn't feel that was necessary given that we've got Councillor Hopkins and Councillor Cowles as our representatives on that group. So the reports are in front of you. You can take them as read and just ask first of all, Councillor Hopkins, do you wish to add any comments with your experience on the committee?
Well, no, thank you, Mayor Kircher. Look, what I will say is this. I probably was a bit sceptical about the value of these committees when I first joined them. And I was rightly advised by the mayor not to be quite so procedurally precise as one might expect people to be at a council meeting, because they are community organisations and therefore slightly more informal and relaxed. I think two things have happened that have actually really strengthened my belief in their value. And probably the most crucial thing is that Environment Canterbury principally has contributed a much more significant amount of money for projects. And the projects that you've seen described in here are really transformational. They're genuinely improving and enhancing wetlands and waterways and so on. We did a field trip just a couple of Fridays ago on the 16th, and we had a look at some of the projects around on the northern side of the Waitaki River. We went and had a look at the Kurau wetland regeneration, which is just absolutely stunning. And we looked at a wonderful project that the Runaka at Muraki are actually doing at Burton's Pond. And there's a massive replanting and revegetation there that has been assisted with funding from a whole range of people. And they've even gone so far as to plant an orchard on an island so that when people are wandering and walking through, they'll just have fruit to pick and eat and enjoy. It's stunning and wonderful. They've identified 70 sites, the Runaka, 30 of which are in public ownership of Crown land. And this is the first one they're doing. Their estimate is that for every volunteer they have, that the actual cost of every volunteer is $100,000 in terms of, operation, equipment, all those other provisions. And by no means can the zone committee fund all of that, but it is a significant and effective contributor. And we really have, there's been clearance along the Hakataramia Valley. Whole rivers have been opened and made accessible. We saw a picnic site that 2 years ago you couldn't go near because the river was so completely clogged up. So these zone committees are actually achieving very, very significant outcomes, largely by enabling and funding community groups and farmer groups and others who are actually actively involved in enhancing water quality and improving state of rivers and wetlands. And yeah, I really think they are of immense value, and I'm glad that the three councils continue to support them.
Thank you. Councillor Cowles. Just not sure if he's actually present there, but if he is, welcome to give comments on the Upper Waitaki one. No. That's all right. He's been pulled away, having to work today as well as attend this meeting. as much as possible. So we'll move on. Does anyone have any questions? Be really good if people have some really searching questions for Councillor Hopkins. Councillor Blackley, you must have 15. No. Okay. Would someone like to move we receive the information there? Councillor Blackley, thank you very much. And the Deputy Mayor Halalele. Those in favour, please say aye. Those against, that's carried. Thanks very much, Jim, for your work on the committee. So the legal status of it is it's a joint committee between 3 councils with significant community membership on them as well. And good to see that you see the value in that. So it's good feedback as well. So with that, that brings the end to the public part of our agenda. We've got there's 4 items listed in the public excluded, 2 sets of minutes and 2 other items. One of those isn't actually ready for us today. So just from the public information, we will have the 2 minutes and the item on the Oamaru Whitestone Civic Trust update. So thank you very much to everyone who has joined us in the chamber and online. And we'll sign off as part of the council meeting. And there will be a live stream this afternoon for the PAR meeting. Just acknowledge that.